Vous m'entendez? Ouais. Alors, je ne m'adresse pas aux gens ici dans le salle, mais je m'adresse aux gens dans le streaming parce qu'eux, ils ne comprennent pas forcément ce qui se passe. Donc, bienvenue à tout le monde qui nous a joignés en streaming. Nous, pour vous tenir en courant, on vous laisse savoir qu'on va commencer environ en 10 minutes. Donc, je fais la même chose en anglais. So, I'm not speaking to the people here. I'm sorry, there are going to be other people speaking to you. I would like to address the people who are following us on streaming, and I would like to let you know that we will start in about 10 minutes. So, for all the people here, you're invited to keep on talking.
Il y a des places.
2 minutes.
Est-ce que tout le monde est là? Oui. Très bien. Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Bonsoir à vous qui êtes ici ce soir à Bruxelles. Bonsoir à tous ceux qui sont aussi
in Brussels today. Good evening also to all those in front of their screens, in the north, in the south of Belgium, but also in many other places mobilized, all for Surfrider Europe. So thank you all for being present today, because it is a sign of your interest for this issue of ocean and climate. Many people do ignore this issue, not only the broad audience, but also the policymakers. We often talk about forests and their role in the climate change, but less attention is paid to oceans, which are very important at the level of oxygen, carbon, and of course for climate in general. We are all gathered here in Brussels tonight. At the same moment in Lima, Peru, negotiators of the climate conventions are working and preparing a framework with basic principles for the next agreement that will be ambitious, we hope. These negotiations will take place in Paris in December 2015, within 1 year. These negotiations should lead to a very important agreement following Kyoto. That was for background information. Surfrider, taking the initiative of this conference, is a European foundation present in Brussels since 2010. We have as a mission to protect oceans, seas, shores, and all people benefiting from it. They can be passionate about sports or just live on the shore. We gather a lot of passionate people. They are among the first witnesses of what is at stake at the level of oceans today. So that's who Surfrider is. Our objective tonight, as a mediator between sea, earth, inhabitants, and all other stakeholders, was to gather several stakeholders from the ocean community here in the same room, in order to present several levels of mobilization. You will be able to listen to scientists, international organizations, civil society organizations as well, and of course citizens also, very committed citizens, as you will see. Tonight, we will show the interests of an alliance between all these stakeholders. We will show how we can build bridges, how diversity is actually a very important asset we have in order to understand this issue, but also to react about ocean and climate. So we want to share about all these elements and launch a debate in order to find solutions together. I will now give the floor to André Ruet. He's our moderator. He's a journalist. He works for Imagine Demain Le Monde, a Belgian review. I wish you all a very good conference.
Bonsoir. Pour ma part, je vais contextualiser en quelques mots.
I would like to give you some information about this evening. I see a lot of young people in this room. Maybe most of you were even too young when this conference was organized in '92 in Rio to understand all that. It was a summit for the Earth. We wanted to deal with all the big problems affecting environment. We wanted to imagine new ways to live. It was a wonderful moment for mobilization. We thought at that time that it was the starting point of change, a quick change in the right direction. But actually, very few things have changed, even though the issue of climate has been recognized. So even though countries present there recognized that climate change was a problem, they tried to mobilize in order to mitigate the production of CO2 and the other effects on climate. But it's the 20th conference of the parties, the COP, as we call it. So all the stakeholders linked to climate will gather for the 20th conference in Paris next year, as has been said by the previous speaker. It is a very important conference because we would like to settle an objective in order to reduce the increase of temperature to 2 degrees. Why 2 degrees? Well, because we don't know what would happen if we would exceed this 2-degree limit. So there would be a lot of phenomena like the permafrost phenomena and other problems at the poles, among others. Also, a change in the composition of oceans could be observed, and a lot of consequences that could lead to a very quick increase in temperature that could reach up to 6 degrees with effects we cannot measure today, nor for human health, nor for migration, nor for a mandatory migration of fauna and flora, and all other problems that would result from such an increase higher than 2 degrees on the planet. The objective of the Paris conference is not to exceed these 2 degrees. That's for the global context of tonight. We will deal with oceans and with the role of oceans within the framework of climate change. The first speaker will speak in the name of UNESCO and will deal with the scientific aspects related to this issue.
Bonsoir à toutes et à tous.
Good evening, everyone. Before starting, I'd like to thank Surfrider, especially Elodie, to give the UNESCO and the Oceanographic Conference and Commission a place here to express itself and tell you how important it is to build partnerships, broader partnerships, to work together with all stakeholders interested in climate change. I think you all know UNESCO. It is a United Nations agency for culture communication. It's been 54 years since we've been developing our commission, COI, as we call it. It's not known by the broad public because actually, even though within UNESCO we promote international cooperation and coordination of the research program as well as the services and the capacity building in order to increase all the knowledge related to nature and oceans, well, scientists until now have worked within their own community, within the science world, and did not really have the need before to communicate with the broader audience or the decision makers. UNESCO and this commission, and also this commission and the civil society. Why and how? Well, the influence of civil society has grown over the last 20 years. It has contributed to a development of democracy, a key factor for democracy development, actually, because we could improve the interaction at the global level. I have to say that on the international scene, civil society, not only in Europe, in Belgium or France, but also in many other parts of the world, has a very big role to play. This evolution within the society does not mean to reduce the prerogatives of UNESCO and other international institutions or member states, but aims at implementing partnerships with a broader base. We know today that actually one planet is one ocean. We use this motto as COI to prove that what happens at one in one place in the world will have an effect on many other places. So we'd like to involve many people from every scale, from local to global, from private to public, and so on, beyond generations, beyond the different disciplines, in order to answer the current challenges. Otherwise, we won't find any solution to the current situation. You understand that our commission in UNESCO wanted to be here today in order to reaffirm the support to Surfrider and also say how much we support a platform that has been launched on the 10th of June by UNESCO, by Irina Bokova, the General Director. It is called Ocean and Climate 2050. It was launched at the occasion of the World Day for Oceans. It's been a new World Day installed by United Nations recently. France, as a member state of UNESCO and also the new host of the climate conference in 2015, decided to get closer to UNESCO and to cooperate in order to prepare this COP together. France will play a very big role in this organization because it is hosting the huge event, but it also wishes to contribute with UNESCO to a better solution at the global level with other European member states. They'd like to communicate more to the broad audience and work hand in hand with civil society in the future. As it is the United Nations conference, COI and UNESCO will be present, and thanks to the cooperation developed through the platform, other stakeholders, not only governmental or institutional stakeholders, will enjoy the access to the information. We try to make this information easily accessible to both the broad audience and the decision makers. We also have bonds with the science community, and we think that's a warranty at the level of the quality of the information we spread at the international scale. That's why we would like to exchange with our current partners, our new partners, about these topics in order to develop knowledge and spread the word. I'd like to say that we started this a long time ago, actually since '98, at the occasion of the World Year about Oceans. We worked with Nausicaa and the Global Ocean Network in order for the United Nations to create such a World Day. So Nausicaa is a founding member of this platform. There has also been a very important meeting with people that you may know, Terra Expedition, as they are called. We've been working with them in order to prepare the conference Rio Plus 20, and we spread different communications, documents within the public. We used their very interesting competencies in order to spread the word at a broader level and formulate our information in a language that would be understandable by all and not only to the scientist community. So actually our relations with the platform, with Tara, with Nausicaa, as an objective to continue to develop energy and exchanges about these topics between the civil society, in the broad sense of the term, the governments, the scientists, and develop together a global advocacy with the different stakeholders of which their competencies are really diverse and additional. COI also works with several communities, among them the communities using the oceans. In Barcelona, from the 16th to the 21st of November, we held a conference, the second conference on oceanic research. The idea was to gather 600 scientists from more than 70 different countries. This event could take place thanks to the FNOB, also organizer of the Barcelona World Race, a very well-known sailing event with 2 participants per team. And actually, the skippers have decided to mobilize. They do not agree to sail just for sailing. They are witnesses today of what is happening at the level of oceans. We see them as heroes, heroes for the young also, and they commit themselves. They will actually use Argo equipment and put it in the ocean during the race. Actually, in these boats, you have to pay attention to the weight of everything. Food, clothes, everything is weighted in order to be sure that you're as light as possible. But they all agreed, all participants agreed to take on such an equipment on the boat, a buoy called Arco, in order to gather information, because they will drop these buoys in places where actually we would need to know more about what's happening. These buoys will be dropped at several levels in several different marine environments, and the information will be used after that by research centers. So we will make sure that these data will be used by society and not only by some. It will be spread at a larger level once the data is gathered, thanks to this operation. During these days, they've been talking about their knowledge. They've been dealing with all the issues in oceans, acid, plastic, not only the visible plastic, but also the microparticles have been dealt with. The hypoxic areas without oxygen, where fauna and flora have a lot of problems, were dealt with. Well, without any consultation, all these scientists from more than 70 countries, from different generations and disciplines, all had the same message at the end of their interventions. We need multidisciplinarity. We need exchanges between generations. We need to get science out of labs. We need to work with the civil society in order to inform the audience and also create more links between institutions, private companies, researchers, and populations. These messages were dealt anonymously, and we can be proud of that. I hope that the action of Surfrider is shown as very, very present. The 8th June will be the World Day for Ocean, and we decided to make it a special day in UNESCO in Paris with the delegations of Monaco and other permanent delegations. We will organize a special day that will be also in the communications of other UNESCO stakeholders, I hope, with scientists and stakeholders from private and public sectors. We will try to show how important this issue is and to mobilize young people, young researchers, among others, but also recognize researchers. We hope that many decision makers of a high level will be there. The Prince Albert of Monaco will be there, also François Hollande, and maybe other heads of states and governments, because we hope that after this day, researchers and young people will bring their message to those who will be in the heart of negotiations, because today there is one thing that is certain. If climate lies in the heart of the climate change discussions, it's not included in the negotiations. No, she says, I meant the ocean and not the climate. So actually, we hope that working all together, and thanks to the information spread by all NGOs, governments working more and more together, well, we hope that oceans will become a key topic and will be included finally in these negotiations, will finally get the place it deserves. So thank you for your attention. I want to insist on the fact that oceans cover 71% of the planet. Without oceans, there is no life. When you breathe, actually, you have to realize that forests gives you oxygen, but oceans as well. So actually we all have to mobilize and understand how crucial it is that we all contribute to this mobilization. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you.
Maintenant, c'est Sophie Sieve.
Sophie Sieve from the Marine Plymouth Lab will talk about the oceans, will talk about the role of oceans in the climate issue, the impact of oceans, but also the impact on oceans and the services related to oceans. So that's the scientific part. Earlier, I was wrong because actually I said that there were 600 scientists, but it was due to our conversation before. Now I'll give the floor to Sophie. Thank you. I will give this presentation in English, so if you need any translation into French, please ask for headphones.
Thank you for the introduction. I think you've covered everything I was going to say in way of introduction, so I'll just go straight into my presentation. Sorry. So it is often said that we know more about the dark side of the moon than we do about the ocean. And yet the ocean is really vital for us all, and this for three main reasons. The first is that the ocean covers 70% of the surface of the Earth. Secondly, the ocean actually represents more than 90% of the Earth's biosphere, which is the living space in which organisms can exist. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, phytoplankton, which is microscopic plants that drift in the ocean and photosynthesize in the same way as land plants actually produce the same amount of oxygen as land plants do. So this diagram shows some of the key processes that take place in the ocean, particularly in relation to carbon, and also showing the importance of phytoplankton. So one of these is that carbon dioxide is drawn down into the ocean from the atmosphere across the surface of the ocean, and this carbon dioxide is taken up by phytoplankton through photosynthesis. Phytoplankton, as I said, it's marine plants. They are at the base of the food chain, so they are then consumed by zooplankton, which are then in turn eaten by fish and higher predators and marine mammals. Then when phytoplankton dies, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and this process can lock away vast amounts of carbon out of the oceanic system. So this process in particular is really important when we talk about human carbon emissions and how the ocean is providing a service to humanity by taking up this carbon dioxide and locking some of it away in the sediments. So then another key service that the ocean provides is by distributing heat around the globe. So this map shows the global the global circulation, which is driven by changes in density. Seawater density itself is determined by a combination of both temperature and salinity, which is the salt content. So this map shows some of the surface currents. For example, the Gulf Stream that I'm sure you all know about is a wind-driven surface current that travels poleward in the North Atlantic. And as it travels poleward, it cools, and as it cools, it becomes more dense and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And then this deep circulation distributes the water around into the other oceanic basins. And this process can take up to 1,000 years in time before the water upwells or comes back up to the surface again. So this process is important in terms of absorbing heat from the atmosphere and taking it away and into the deep ocean. So this top graph in red, you're probably familiar with, shows the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide that has taken place, in this case, since the 1960s. This increase is also mirrored in the oceanic concentration of carbon dioxide. So actually, the ocean has absorbed around 30% of the emitted carbon dioxide over the last 250 years. And without this ocean sink, atmospheric carbon dioxide would be around 450 parts per million rather than just under 400, which is what it currently is. However, this absorption of carbon dioxide into the ocean is having an impact on the ocean itself through a series of chemical processes. As the carbon dioxide dissolves, it lowers the pH of the water of the ocean. So, in fact, the acidity of the upper ocean has increased by 30% since the Industrial Revolution. So what does this mean for marine life? This is a question that many scientists are concentrating on at the moment. And this slide summarizes the main findings from hundreds of experiments that have simulated the pH of the ocean that is expected to be the pH of the ocean by the end of this century. So what happens as carbon dioxide dissolves is that, as I said, there are various chemical reactions I won't go into the details of, but one of the important things is that the concentration of carbonate ions decreases, and this is very important for certain animals, but also plants that utilize carbonate, in particular to form calcium carbonate, which is made for shells, both in mollusks and also in some types of plankton and phytoplankton. So this slide summarizes some of the negative impacts that have been found. On the left-hand column shows, maybe I can use this. The column on the left summarizes findings in animals, which are all being found to have negative impacts in terms of their growth or larval survival or their calcification rates. The middle two panels are algae, but types of algae that use carbonate to form their shells, so they're also being negatively impacted. On the other hand, the right-hand column is showing some positive impacts. These are actually plants, fleshy algae, and a type of phytoplankton that are benefiting from ocean acidification because of the increased abundance of carbon dioxide, which they use for photosynthesis. So from acidification to ocean warming, as I mentioned previously, the ocean is absorbing heat, the excess heat that's being produced. So in fact, the atmosphere, compared to the ocean, the atmosphere and the land are relatively unimpacted. And in fact, 90% of the excess heat has been taken up by the ocean, and quite a significant proportion of this has been taken up by the deep ocean, which is shown in dark blue on this graph, whereas the light blue represents the upper ocean. So the global map shows that surface temperature has increased globally, and we're already seeing effects of this in terms of fish distribution, also in invertebrates and in plankton. So this warming is causing ice to melt, whether it's ice sheets or glaciers, Arctic sea ice and snow cover. All of these have been decreasing. And these satellite images from NASA show a comparison between 1999-2000 in summer on the left-hand side and winter on the right-hand side. And the bottom two panels show the same months, but in 2012. And you can see, particularly for the summer images on the left-hand side, that the ice cover has diminished quite drastically. In fact, this decrease has been found since 1978 in this study, but this has been particularly pronounced since the turn of the 21st century. So all this melting ice added to the thermal expansion of seawater, which is the expansion of seawater caused by increased temperature, means that sea level is rising. And the report from the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has found that sea level rise since the middle of the 19th century has been larger than during the previous 2,000 years. And this graph shows the sea level rise since 1900, which has risen by 190 millimeters, or almost 20 centimeters. The report also found, using modeling, that under different scenarios projected for 2100, that the rate of sea level rise will very likely exceed that we've seen during the past 40 years. And under these projections, the future rise in sea level will be around 400 to 800 millimeters, or almost a meter. So sea level rise combined with high tides is causing increased flooding. It's not uniform everywhere, but certain areas of the globe are more susceptible to this. And this study by the Union of Concerned Scientists that focused on 4 different cities along the east coast of the United States found that sea level rise there has been much more pronounced. It's been of the order of 20 centimeters only since 1970, rather than for the whole of the century, as we saw in the previous slide, which was showing the mean, the global average. And they also did some projections looking at the next 15 years and found that flooding events may triple in the next 15 years and increase by 10 times in the next 30 years. In addition to all of this, we have the rise in extreme weather events, which is associated with warmer temperatures and higher precipitation. This is something we're already seeing around the world. Recent examples include the super typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines last year, which caused major destruction. Closer to home, particularly for me in the UK, earlier this year we had some terrible storms and tidal surges. In fact, they were the worst in the last 60 years. This is causing cliff erosion, with the top photograph of a house that just, where the cliff it was built on just crumbled, and the house ended up on the beach. The bottom photo is actually taken in Plymouth, at just outside. I used to own one of the flats in that white building, and the pub just beneath it was completely destroyed by this storm surge. Increased precipitation also means more landslides, and there's been some devastation caused and loss of life caused by that, in a recent example in Indonesia. So we say that we can only manage what we can measure, and so this means that we really need a global system for observing and monitoring the oceans, so that we can measure changes that are occurring in the physics, the chemistry, and the biology of the ocean, and also so that we can better predict future changes. So this is a central goal of my organization, the Partnership for Observation of the Global Oceans, as well as other international organizations. And we're working to promote the completion of such a global, sustained and integrated ocean observing system for the benefit of society. To achieve a system that is truly global, we need to fill gaps, and in particular we have gaps in the southern hemisphere and in developing countries, which currently don't all have the capacity to measure and to monitor their coastal waters. So POGO is working to build capacity in developing countries so that we can fill these gaps. And ultimately, POGO aims to bring these messages to governments and decision makers. So this infogram gives you a bit of an idea of what an observing system looks like. It's composed of many different components. There are some satellite-based sensors that are measuring temperature, for example, from space at the surface of the ocean. There are also many ships, both research vessels and commercial vessels, that are used for deploying instruments. And then we have automated instruments that are either fixed in certain locations or drifting buoys, like the drifting floats, like the Argo floats that are shown in yellow on the left-hand side of this picture. There's also gliders, which are the sort of aeroplane-looking instruments that can glide across the ocean and take measurements. Another method is actually to equip animals with sensors, such as seals. There are some very small and lightweight sensors that can be attached onto these animals, and they don't cause any disruption. They can go about their daily lives and measure temperature and salinity at the same time. So an exciting new development at the moment is using citizens for making these measurements, and my colleague Bob Bruin from Plymouth Marine Laboratory, who's here this evening, is leading two projects at PML, one of which is looking to equip surfboards with sensors for measuring temperature and also salinity. And the second project, and there's a demonstration on the table over there of this disc. It's called a Secchi disc. It's used for measuring water clarity, and this can be used by recreational water users, and so it's also being used for educational purposes. So if you want to find out more about the citizen science or the ocean observing aspects, there's a lot of documentation over there, and also some additional slides that I think will be available online. So to wrap up, these are the 10 key messages I'd like you to take away this evening. Climate change is happening at an unprecedented rate. The increase in carbon dioxide is causing warming, sea level rise, retreating glaciers, ice sheets, snow cover and sea ice, and also ocean acidification. We now know that human activity is the dominant cause of recent global warming. The ocean plays a key role in the climate system, and so far it has mitigated the effects of increased CO2 emissions by absorbing both carbon dioxide and heat. However, this is impacting on the ocean physics, chemistry, on marine ecosystems, and on the services provided by the ocean. But these effects are complex and not yet fully understood. Therefore, we need a sustained, integrated global system of ocean observations to monitor changes to the ocean and to predict future changes. And these systems can now be complemented by novel approaches to data gathering, such as citizen science, and in particular the use of mobile apps. To expand observing systems globally, we need to provide training and instrumentation to developing countries. And these are all goals of POGO and other international organizations. So I've just listed here some of the sources I used for this presentation, also further reading if you want to get into the detailed reports. I also would like to acknowledge some colleagues who provided slides for this presentation. My contact details are there if you want to get in touch, ask questions. And finally, I'd like to thank the Surfrider Foundation for inviting me to give this presentation. And thank you all for your attention.
Merci Sophie pour ce très intéressant.
Thank you, Sophie. Very interesting scientific presentation. We'll now give the floor to the surfers. Two surfers will take the floor. Philippe Maison, he's going to explain explain what Surfrider is, what the citizens can do, why they're so interested in the climate, and then his colleague Martin van Scheek, Dutchman, will take the floor. He's a Coast Guard also. He's going to explain the Dutch dossier, mobilization dossier. He's going to explain that Surfrider wishes to develop consultation. And then Philippe Maison will take the floor once again to explain how the citizens can act also. So walk the talk, basically, regarding questions having to do with the ocean and climate. Indeed, you've covered my whole presentation. No. As Rejane said, Sophie said, all this is extremely complex. We talked about the fact that we had to move at a political level, scientific level, and what is our role in all this? Question mark. That's Surfrider. Elodie discussed this. Surfrider, what is Surfrider? Question mark. Climate, citizens, the environment. We are there to defend the coastline, oceans, and the users, all of us. If you're here tonight, it's because you love the ocean. We're talking 25% of the CO2 absorbed by the oceans. Without the oceans, we just wouldn't be here. Oceans equal life, so let's respect our oceans. So climate, as I said, citizens, environment, consultation, necessary consultation, communication. We're going to explain this with Martin. Okay? Martin, briefly.
Au secours. Qui viendrait m'aider? Non. Vas-y, tu me le remets. Ça va venir, c'est les... Voilà, tu mets la suivante, c'est sûr? Vas-y. Voilà. Ça ne marche pas, je ne sais pas pourquoi. Non. Ça arrive, vous voyez, on prépare tout ça très bien, ça se passe très bien. C'est la... Ok. Je vais essayer une nouvelle fois. Ça ne marche pas. Non, ça ne marche pas. Allez.
Tu veux que je t'aide?
Ben oui.
Bon. On va vérifier. Et puis devant. Voilà.
Tu peux mettre la 29. C'est bizarre, ça a marché très bien jusqu'à maintenant. Et voilà. Vous voyez,
On a fait exprès.
ça illustre un peu la chose finalement. Vous savez,
It's a good illustration of the ocean, says the speaker. There's a problem. The ocean in climate negotiations has been absent for a while. Citizens, political decisions, etc., regarding the ocean, they are also absent, you see? And I'm just illustrating what I'm saying here, says the speaker. I don't know what to do, says the speaker. It's a bit of a scandal, says the speaker jokingly. No, all this was prepared just to illustrate the fact that oceans, citizens, we still have a lot to do, but I'll kick off. Okay, I've got this support. I'm going to present to you Surfrider, just like earlier on. We are an NGO, non-governmental organization, headquarters in Biarritz. We are all over the place in Europe. We have offices in Bureau, Saint-Sebastian, Brussels, obviously, beautiful city, Paris, Marseille, and also we have a lot of representations in Europe, throughout Europe. Look at this great, did you see that great map? The great map. Okay, I'm just checking.
on vous remercie de votre patience. Vous voyez, c'est des choses qui arrivent.
Thank you for your patience. This is Europe. Okay, our objectives, as I said, to defend the oceans, coastal areas, the populations, people basically. We are at the heart of the matter, always bear this in mind. Also our guidelines, working guidelines, maritime transport, quality of the water, water, energy, waste. You're perhaps aware of our different initiatives, many initiatives, who we are, a network, more than 1,500 voluntary workers, more than 10,000 members, and more than 40 people supporting us. Okay, the climate and all this. At Surfrider, we receive a lot of questions. I'm not going to repeat the excellent presentation of my colleague, Sophie Rejane. You have all these reasons that mean that we're interested in these themes: climate, ocean, global temperature. The temperature is increasing, the oceans are rising, coastal areas are threatened, and along the coastlines we're there basically. Us, when I say us, it means our activities. We talked about surfing. There's not only surfing, it's extremely important, but also we have pleasure, leisure, fishing, windsurfing, people living along the coastline. You have economic activities, non-economic activities, the simple pleasure of watching the ocean. All this potentially is in danger, jeopardized. Our role, we are a kind of link. We are at the Tricoterie links. We have the platform Ocean Climate, and we have all the citizens. We're there to work in the field. We're going to discuss this in a second. The environment, of course. I've jotted down many things. I'm not going to read everything. But here we're talking biodiversity. Sophie explained this really well. The resources, fishing. I work in Biarritz in France. I'm really lucky. A lot of people live from fishing, climate change. It's going to modify the amniotic resources, fishing problems, which will trigger poverty problems, trigger migration. When you talk climate change, that small thing supposedly can have gigantic consequences. Even if we're talking about the environment, when you talk about the environment, it's the fifth, sixth wheel of the cart. The environment affects us directly, and quite clearly it affects also the coastal areas. We talked about extreme weather conditions, storms, hurricanes. Xintia in France a few years ago, remember, it was deadly. This is linked to the poor management of the coastal areas, zones that were built, dwellings that were built and shouldn't have been built in some areas. But we can do something. We can act, react, intervene. Erosion, submersion problems. We're talking about really our heritage, natural heritage, economic heritage, but also our cultural heritage. I work in Biarritz, headquarters of Surfrider. It's at the heart of surfing, and our heritage is jeopardized. Surfing is not just surfing on the waves, it goes far beyond that. It's this culture, also the economic stakeholders take advantage of this. It's an image, it's a heritage, and this heritage, as I said, is in danger, jeopardized. I'm drinking some water, of course, because drinking water is great. So climate raises questions, triggers questions. What are we doing concretely as Surfrider? I said that we make things move. We are walking the talk. We're dealing with the coastal areas. We are dealing with the stakes. We have we bear in mind sustainable development. We have also the economy, the social part of things, the environment, the context. We have the coastal areas. We're going to talk about the environment, human beings, what we do with our environment, and climate change means that we have to develop new programs, new elements. We have to anticipate also, as we said, climate change. It means greenhouse gas, the impact of greenhouse gas effect, climate heating. The idea, what we need to do is consume much less, consume even less, and we need to produce whilst using less fuel. I mean, fuel equals humongous quantities of greenhouse gas, and we need less, of course, greenhouse gas effect. Renewable energy is also important, and concerning our territories, we have what we call the renewable energy, hydraulic energy, onshore, offshore, windmills, extremely important. We need to produce energy, nevertheless, because we need energy. Here we have a bit of electricity in this room, which is nice, but let's produce clean energy. And if we set up, install renewable energy systems using eolian, wind, we have already infrastructures, existing infrastructures. The citizens, you, me, all of us, we can participate. It's important to trigger stronger consultation. We need to take the floor, we need to be heard, and we need to act, we can act concretely. Our commitments are rather straightforward. Integrate climate in the climate debate, to reduce the greenhouse gas effect, to maintain our landscape, very important, and also to participate. I'd like to remind you that Surfrider, coast, sea, ocean, the users, let's protect our landscape, let's protect our heritage. What can we do concretely, question mark? This basically, this is what we set up for everyone. We have the system keepers of the coast, gardiens de la côte in French. It was set up 22 years ago. The idea is that all of us, when we notice an impact at the level of the coastal area, at the level of the oceans, you get in touch with Surfrider, and then we can work together with a keeper of the coast. You're going to meet one in a second, and us, Surfrider, will set up a system, communication system, awareness system. We can mobilize people in the field, and then we can make available the technical expertise, legal expertise also, because sometimes there are cases that are just not acceptable, legally speaking, and we are there to defend our coasts, our oceans, our seas. This is the initiative, Gardiens de la Côte, Keepers of the Coast. I'm going to show you an example with Martijn. Martijn is going to present to you an extraordinary case linked to climate change. He managed this brilliantly in the Netherlands.
Okay, I'm Martijn Verschijk. I'm from Holland, Amsterdam. I'm a keeper of the coast. I'm also a board member and co-founder of the Dutch chapter of Surfrider Foundation Holland. And I'm coordinating our program, which is called Save Our Spots. So what we do there is like to protect our playground, to protect local surf spots, mainly focusing on the quality of the waves. There are also lots of environmental issues involved. We're also working on that, but that's not part of this program and also not really part of this presentation. So I'm really focusing on me as a citizen. I'm doing this as a volunteer in my free time to get involved on this issue and try to cope with like the impacts we face as surfers of climate change. In Holland, sea level rise is a big issue, so that's the main focus. This affects coastal strengthening, so the coast needs to be strengthened, and it therefore affects all Dutch surfers. So to give you a little bit quick the context, like half of Holland is below sea level, so there's a strong need to strengthen our coast or our coastline. So we need to build big dunes or dikes to prevent the country from flooding. So and because of sea level change, it's like was explained before, it's increasing. So it becomes more and more important. The Dutch government has the policy to use as much as possible like natural processes. So what they do is they take sand from the deeper part of the North Sea and add that to the coastal zone on the beach or in the surf area. And we're talking like millions of cubic meters of sand. And a lot of parts of the Dutch coast, every 5 years, there's a beach nourishment. So sand is added to the beach or to the surf area. Of course, this has a big impact on the sea environment, the coastal environment, but I will focus on the impacts for us as surfers. But using this method instead of like artificial impacts like dikes or groins or jetties or stuff like that, it also has advantages. So the reality for Dutch surfers is like we have to surf on a coast that is constantly being modified. In this picture you see a ship which is pumping sand into the surf area and somebody surfing in front of the ship. pipes on the beach to process all the sand, and the picture down you see like a bulldozer on the beach, which is quite a typical thing to see in Holland if you go surfing. But you have some nice waves as well. So I was working on a few projects. I took 2 projects as an example. The top picture show like the situation before the beach nourishment, and the picture below that is the situation afterwards. The one on the left, the pattern project, is still ongoing, so the sand is added there as we speak. And the one on the right, the sand engine, sand motor in Dutch, is an innovative project where they made an artificial peninsula completely made out of sand, and the natural processors will move that sand towards the beach, both going north, going south, using currents. The wind will distribute the sand, and so just take over. So the idea is that you dump like a large quantity of sand at one time, and then you don't have to do anything for hopefully 20 years. But it's the first time it's ever been done, and so far it looks promising. But you can understand this has a major impact on surfers, because both used to be really good spots, surf spots, and after the project the coastline is completely different, really completely different, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but it's something that we as surfers should be involved in and influence the decision making. So these projects can have some negative impacts on surfing conditions, also include possible surf bans during construction, but also afterwards. It can degrade the quality of the waves, and sometimes there are also safety issues involved, but usually this is a big impact. So surfers need to be sure that we are included in these issues, in the development of the coastal areas. So we need to get surfing on the agenda, become a stakeholder in projects, and influence the decision making. Before this project, surfers were not really included as a stakeholder, but due to our work, we now are included as a stakeholder in these kinds of huge projects. So we're in the governance process. What we want is to improve the surfing conditions, or at least conserve the surfing conditions, so we can keep surfing at that place, and that we get access to the beach. So we have various tools to engage. Lobbying with local governments, but also now we're starting to lobby with the national government as well. In Holland, it's a good thing that for projects like this, the government is obligatory. It's mandatory to include local stakeholders. So that's a good thing for us. So we can get on the agenda and join the discussions about the projects. If not, or if we don't get enough attention, we can also go to the press, organize events, organize a petition, all this stuff we've done. And also have our own keepers of the coast, so local people working on this issue and knowing everything on the ground. If things don't really work out well, because we're a small interest amongst huge other interests, so we can sometimes resort to some actions, usually in a funny way, to get more attention, and so we can make ourselves heard. And even legal actions at the Dutch Supreme Court, we had one there recent, not with positive outcomes for us, unfortunately, but at least we're trying to influence decision making. So we're one stakeholder. There are many others, and environmental issues, recreation, economics, and so on. But still, we're managing to influence. So some things we have done. This is outside the Dutch Supreme Court. after the case was there. We organized a beach burial, like we symbolically bury the surf spot in the ocean. Press attention in the newspapers, national newspapers. It's also the beach burial. Be in the ocean, like it's really media genetic. The media really likes this kind of stuff, so we get a lot of attention. Lots of writing of letters, petitions, so on, going with lots of service to City Hall, for example, TV interview, action outside of the local government office, and various campaigns in magazines and so on, surf media. So now we finally got recognized as an official stakeholder in these projects, and we were able to influence the decision making. And finally, the local community is included, and they're finally slowly getting the feeling that they can also influence decision making. Usually a lot of people feel they cannot influence such big projects, but in some ways they can. So in that way we're an example and hope to inspire other local surfers to do the same. So we have a lot of goals for the coming years, but we want to make sure that surfing gets included in Dutch legislation, possible European legislation, so it gets a more protected status. And surfers have to be compulsorily compensated for the loss of their surf spots if they get damaged by coastal strengthening or other impacts. And to get ourselves better heard, money talks, so we need to assess the economic importance of surfing, because there's a lot of economic gains from various branches from the surfing, so it impacts the local economy as well. So help us get the balance back. So this was my presentation. Hope you got some practical insights.
Voilà, donc vous avez vu avec un exemple concret.
Indeed, this very simple example showed you that we can act. We can stay in our home and think that it won't change, or you can do as Martin and act as they did in the Netherlands. I really love some of their actions because actually they draw conclusions from reality and they are able to start things and also be included in consultation, finally also be part of the solution with several benefits for all stakeholders involved. When in the beginning surf was rather endangered, well, we could find a solution together, a shared solution, a very optimistic solution. So it shows us we can act, we can have an impact. We can't talk about every activity or every Surfrider structure, but we have a lot of other good examples, among others related to oil prospection. So of course we do oppose to these actions. I invite you to support us if you can. In the Canaria, we are now fighting against oil prospection. So of course our lungs, our oceans are endangered, and we also worked in several French regions, among them Hollande. We've been talking about water energy. Well, we are now thinking of such a project in Bretagne near Saint-Brieuc. Actually, we have to say that the consultation is not the strongest point in this project, but we try to involve citizens to be part of the consultation. We'd like to build the project together with all stakeholders, as it has been presented in other cases by Martin. I won't talk about erosion, as it has already been said in a very brilliant way. So thank you, Martin, because you did it great. Now I could also talk about other potential problems, all the floodings I talked about earlier, also the increase of the sea level and the fact that we have to adapt to these new references. So we have to improve our way of dealing with these issues, involving more and more citizens, because it is like democracy we are demanding. Climate is here, climate change is here. We did not know it in the past, we know it today, we know it all here in the room today, and also many people following us on the web know about that. So I invite you to also spread the word about this conference and share the videos, because we have to touch more and more people. We have to involve ourselves more and more. That's why we started the Keepers of the Coast program. If you want to become such a keeper, well, it's rather easy. You go to the website of Surfrider, for example, or the keepers directly, and we'll be able to work together, because actually together is a key word. That's the whole meaning of these pictures I'm putting on the slide. Actually, people are volunteering to help us at this level. The coast keepers are volunteers, and you see that Surfrider is bringing them support, knowledge, expertise, and all the background which is required when you want such a project to be successful. And of course, all experiences are positive and enable us to draw good practices regarding oceans, their uses, and the shoreline. When I talk about the fact that we use the ocean, of course, it's not only about economic aspects. We want to valorize all these activities. Surfing, for example, if you do not know how to take it into account, well, you also have to measure not only the economics, but also the pleasure, for example. So getting to know things in order to understand. That seems crucial, because when you understand what is at stake, you can talk about it, you can inform other people, raise awareness, develop attention, and show what are the problems, what are the solutions, mobilize, get involved, educate not only children but also older people, because we are all affected by this issue, and we need to enter into a very constructive dialogue all together about this environment we love and we adore. The idea is, of course, to change behaviors. I won't be too long, but we'd like also to build a bridge between citizens and negotiators at a higher level. Well, I think our activities do participate to this impact, this influence we could have on environmental policies at the local, regional, national, European scale. Our project also aims at that. The examples given by Martin were very clear. We do valorize all these experiences because we think that what happened in one country could be reproduced in other places. And thanks to all these drops, we will be a big ocean altogether. Of course, climate change is present at local, regional, global challenge. We all want to face this challenge. We are all coast keepers, and we should all get involved in all Europe with everyone and at the benefit of all. Thank you for your attention.
Merci. Il y aura bien sûr une...
Thank you. Of course, we'll take questions and answers afterwards. So the last speaker now is Julien Rochette. He comes from IDRI in France. It's an Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations. He will talk about the Ocean and Climate Platform. He will give us some background information about the creation of this platform in June 2014. And after that, maybe he will tell us the objectives of the platform. Yes, indeed, I'll try to be clear about the platform that has been quoted a few times. I'd like to thank Surfrider for organizing the event, and thanks to all people present in the room despite of the cold weather. So I'd like to talk about this platform, Ocean Climate, created in June 2014, as it was said. But before doing that, I'd like to talk about climate negotiations in general, because this was actually the starting point of our platform. So first item I'd like to deal with is the importance given to oceans today in the climate agenda. First remark, actually, well, until now, oceans have been left aside in the negotiations on climate. If you have a look at the Kyoto Protocol or other very important declarations of other institutions, well, you see that ocean was not included and was not taken into account by the science of climate. The international community tries to organize itself and to mitigate the emissions and also to adapt itself to climate change. But oceans were not taken into account in these measures. Second remark, the oceans are better taken into account by the scientists working on climate. The international group IPCC has been working on climate, of course, but also on ocean. Actually, on the climate science side, Group 1, there have always been people dealing with oceans. And it's interesting to know today that from the latest report of the IPCC published in 2014, Group 2 about impact and adaptation has published 2 chapters dedicated to oceans only. So we see that oceans are taken into account at the level of the science community, but is it enough? Well, for most people, it's not. For most people, it's not enough, and the ocean deserves a bigger place, especially regarding its role, as Sophie explained, in the whole climate process and regarding the impact of this climate change. Impact, of course, we've been talking about acidification, impact on the biology, the fauna, flora, and also human activities and all the activities, not only in the oceans, but also on the shore. What's the interest today of integrating oceans within the climate negotiations, and what is the asset of oceans in this context? Well, there are 3 points I'd like to insist on. First of all, the ocean community is like a microcosm representative of the actors of the climate negotiation. What do I mean? Well, you have the offshore platforms, transportation stakeholders, activities emitting CO2. And then you have the other sectors, the impacted sectors, fishery, aquaculture, tourism, and so on. So actually, you can get into the climate discussion pretty easily, because within our own community, we do reflect what exists at a broader scale in the whole climate community. Second point, and maybe it's the strongest one. When you question the climate question and you use the ocean as a basis, well, actually, you see that north-south differences are not working anymore. Of course, there are differences between north and south, but today it's totally different. There were differences in the negotiations before, but now when we do use oceans as a starting point, well, we realized that all oceans will be impacted by the effects of climate change and acidification. In order to tell it simply, all fishes, they can come from different countries in Africa or Northern Europe, but they will all be impacted by the climate issues. So the strength of this climate community is that we go beyond these differences that are ordinary or considered as ordinary within the negotiations. We also have a lot of experience in multi-scale governance because you know that oceans are managed at several levels. We have the United Nations Convention, there are international conventions related to fishery and transportation, but there are also regional fishery associations, regional conventions, and of course national conventions and agreements. That's really interesting. Why? Because today the climate community tries to articulate these different scales. They want to avoid the top-down logics that were prevailing during the Kyoto process. So the interest is our experience that we could deal with the other stakeholders, namely this multi-scale approach. The timing, why is it the right moment for the climate community to intervene? There are two main reasons. First of all, there is an opportunity, and we have to benefit the important mobilization before the COP of Paris, because all eyes are turning to this very important conference after the failure in Copenhagen. The idea is to reach a more ambitious result. So that's a real opportunity for our ocean community to be visible and participate to the debate. But there are also other more substantial reasons. Actually, Copenhagen has marked the death of the Kyoto Protocol. And the idea with the Paris conference is to build a new regime in climate field. So it's a good moment because we could participate to the very basic principles of this regime, because not everything will stop after the conference in Paris. Of course, this will go on after that. We will have to feed these processes with information, and the timing is very good for us because it could enable us to participate to the birth of this new regime. And for all these reasons, we've decided to create the Ocean and Climate Platform in June 2014 within UNESCO. We gather 40 members, research centers, museums, NGOs, Surfriders, Terra, UNICEN, foundations, Prince Albert II Foundation, COI, different private stakeholders. So actually, we have a multi-stakeholder platform, which can be a strength, but is also a challenge. I'll come back to that later. Today, this platform includes a secretariat coordinating all the activities. We also have a science committee gathering scientists, experts of links between ocean and climate, but also experts in social sciences. They have to be included in this thinking about climate. A group has been created to raise awareness to the broad public, about these issues, and we also have another group in charge of advocacy. They shall draft proposals that could be included in the new conventions, including oceans within climate agreements. So our assets are to gather many stakeholders from the ocean community, but it's also very difficult to find harmony within such a diverse group. It's not easy to build common messages together. That's what we try to do today and over the last month through meetings, exchanges with the scientific committee we've been creating, because of course the messages we want to promote have to be based on scientific research. And we also had a lot of exchanges with experts from the climate community. Why? Well, in order for the ocean community to get integrated, well, we also have to understand pretty well the context of the different negotiations taking place. Thanks to these meetings, these exchanges, we could develop several messages I'd like to share with you. Of course, I have to tell you that all these messages will be discussed and will still be negotiated in the future. So those are no official messages, but only some ideas that have popped out So I'm speaking in my name and not as a representative of the 40 associations of the platform right now. So that's important to tell you. First message, after everything we've heard, after everything that has been said, well, we'd like to encourage research on the link between ocean and climate, because of course, as we can identify them today, still some aspects are not known. We've not explored some of the aspects. For example, when we talk about the role of the ocean within climate, well, some aspects have to be dealt with, and also about the impact of climate change on oceans. So I told you earlier that we know more and more about the warming, the acidification, but we know a lot less about the real impact on fishery, aquaculture, or leisure. That's where we can identify a gap in research, and we'd like to find a solution. Within the framework of this necessary research, we think that we should also mobilize citizens through participative events we've been talking about, but also the private sector should be involved. They have different equipment, platforms, cables that could also be used for collecting data. So the idea is to encourage research about ocean and climate. Second big message, big objective of the platform would be to train and raise awareness among decision makers about what is at stake at the level of ocean and climate. I'm not talking only about climate here. I'm really talking about oceans as well. As you've heard earlier, negotiators are really focusing on mitigation and adaptation, and they know the ocean issue, but they do not give enough place to it because maybe they don't know all the aspects related to it. They do not take into account the impact of climate change on oceans. There is a double target here, so for climate negotiators, but also for all decision makers regarding oceans. So that's the second message. And the third message is the fact that ocean would be included within the heart of the climate negotiation. What do we mean? Well, members from the Ocean and Climate Platform would like that the role of the oceans would be recognized in the agreement after the Paris conference. So a part of the text, a paragraph or something else, should reflect this importance. The idea is not just to mention the word ocean in the agreement, but the idea is really to put oceans at the agenda. Another idea that is being discussed within the platform for the moment is the fact that we would like to take ocean into account in a better way in the science community, in the climate science, in the IPCC. The idea would be to mobilize for adopting a special report on ocean and climate by IPCC. The idea is not to have a new report on our desk, but to put again the recognition of the ocean issue on the agenda. So I'll end on this, telling you something to be more precise. Our work within this platform is starting, and you heard that we want to mobilize before the Paris meeting, but our objectives are broader. We want oceans to be put on the climate agenda, so we will continue to work on the longer run, of course. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm at your disposal if you want to ask me any question.
Voilà, merci Julien.
Thank you, Julien. So the floor is given to the room. I suppose that you have some questions to ask. I don't know if it's the case already. Normally the microphone should be in the room, so please raise your hand and the microphone will get to you. You can ask a question to one person or to the whole group. You can choose, actually. Yes, before asking my question, I'd like to add something to what Julien said. Actually, there are two main obstacles to the inclusion of oceans in the climate negotiations today. First of all, the climate convention is not a convention to protect natural environment. The idea is to regulate activities more than protect environment. You have to understand that. Within this convention, we think of sovereignty and nation states. So actually, here we are talking about oceans, and oceans are global public goods, even though we could talk about this very same notion, but actually they are not under the competence of states, which is a very important aspect, because these states within negotiations are not really responsible of this part of their environment. You also have the problem of the different legal conventions that exist at the world level. They are all independent, so you have a convention on the rights related to sea, supposed to cover all the marine environment, and there are some grounds at this level in order to work on the protection of environment at this level, but member states are not really motivated. The states are really afraid, especially southern states, because they think that if they commit themselves, they will open a door for the climate convention when they try to be harder and not commit themselves to restrict their emissions. So I'm sorry for this long introduction, but the idea was actually to tell you that before my question, because I think, of course, it's important to have this word included in the preamble of the Paris Convention, because it will help to develop innovative approaches, including not only the states, and my question is to Julien. We had an experience for the protected marine areas managed by NGOs today. So do you think we could find some projects that would focus on the climate aspects, adaptation, mitigation, within this convention? So I'd like to know that. And the second question is, if we include this word in the preamble, don't you think that we would create a positive agenda and we would actually connect pipes between the different treaties and conventions? We would try to stimulate a discussion, especially within the framework of OMI, about the reduction of the emissions for transportation, but also in order to talk about adaptation, so creating synergies between two different legal frameworks that would be joined this way. You are really informed. Are you talking in the name of an organization or an association? No, I'm just a common citizen. I'm glad to be here, and I thank you. Well, you're well informed for a regular citizen, I have to say.
Est en effet partie.
Mathieu is well informed, so much so that I'm not going to answer his first question because it's much too complicated. More seriously, what you're underlining is that we have obstacles because we have a convention of the United Nations regarding the rights related to sea, marine questions. But the problem is that this convention was agreed, passed in '82. We were barely talking about climate change in those days. Thus, we would need clearly to better integrate these problems. The problem is that this centralization between the climate and ocean. Today we're discussing the ocean at UN level, perhaps that we're going to adopt a new agreement regarding the matter, but as to the climate question, it is not included in these discussions. While supporting what you said, I'd like to say that the idea is not just to include the ocean word, the word ocean in the text. No, the idea is to include the word ocean in the program, in the agenda, and it will take years to create links between the conventions, and we need to work together quite clearly. A question over there.
Bonsoir, merci.
Hello, good evening, thank you. I'm a student in Aix-en-Provence, Master 2. I had a question regarding the role of the companies in the climate negotiations, the role that you can grant them at the level of the platform Ocean Climate. Do they have a role? Are they integrated in negotiations? And do you integrate them doing lobbying at their level for COP21, or do you integrate them directly at the level of the platform in question? Thank you. Are you addressing this question to someone specifically? To Julien. Thank you for your question. I'll speak honestly here. Won't beat about the bush. The question of the associating companies at the level of the platform raised many questions. The conclusion drawn is that we can't. Our objective was to be inclusive, and we couldn't not include the association of companies to convince them on the one hand, and on the other hand, because some of them can indeed come up with solutions. We do not want to exclude anyone at the level of the platform, and we wish to work with people of goodwill, amongst which association of companies, World Ocean Council, for instance, and we work with these different stakeholders in order to create messages, forward messages, and develop common actions. A question over there. Thank you very much for these extremely interesting presentations. I'm here as an interested citizen for the group Brussels Climate March. We organized an event, demonstration in September. We're going to organize another climate march next year. Thus, that's an extra possibility. You can all participate. And for Conservation International, NGO, that is developing with IUCN, UNESCO, Oceanographic mission, developing an instrument that's going to mean that we'll be able to include the ocean in our negotiation. We're talking blue carbon here. Means that the idea is to measure the emissions of greenhouse gas at the level of the oceans. We're talking destruction of coastal areas, etc. There is not yet a established system as such. We believe that within 5-6 years we'll have an established system, and also the emissions can be measured. You talked about the fact that we had to measure emissions in order to implement methods, and we hope that we're going to be able to change something with this small instrument. I'd like to add, we were talking about the way, or talking about the importance of the oceans and the coastal areas. Carbon storage at the level of the oceans is even greater than this storage in the forest. Thank you. Wasn't a question, it was a small presentation. Thank you. Over there. Good evening. Thank you for this conference. I'd like to come back to the fact that we haven't established this link between climate heating and ocean. We talk about the pollution of the air and the pollution of the oceans. I'd like to come back to the fact that there's a French NGO named Écologie Sans Frontières, Ecology Without Borders, literally. It filed a complaint against X for jeopardizing the life of others, excess pollution in the air in Paris, basically, that's the theme. And it's an ongoing case. Thus, a preliminary inquiry is going to be launched. could we envisage such a complaint, similar complaint, establishing this link between climate heating and the oceans in order to influence the fact of including these two notions at the level of COP21? Thank you for your question. International justice, that question, it's rather complex, I must admit. But clearly we can say that today it's not included at the level of the debate, for rather technical reasons, that is. The question is, how can you assess damages, bearing in mind that emissions have been there for many years? There's the qualification problem, really. There are too many obstacles in order to trigger these discussions. Indeed, and here we're talking about the climate program agenda. You had a question over there?
Thank you. My name's John Maggs. I work with another Brussels-based organisation that's in oceans and climate issues. It's called Seas at Risk. Surfrider is a member of Seas at Risk, as it happens. I'm also involved in an organisation called the Clean Shipping Coalition, which works through the UN to try and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from ships. But I think perhaps the experience that Seas at Risk had, I mean, Seas at Risk, we work on marine issues, on a whole range of marine environmental issues. And about 10 years ago, we started working on climate issues. And I think, we went through a process similar to the one that you're going through now, looking at how you can bring your concerns about the oceans into the climate discussions. And it's not an obvious one because, I mean, of course, from a scientific point of view, oceans are hugely important to climate systems and to regulating climate and to soaking up heat and CO2 and all of those things. And to some extent, those when the science is being discussed at an international level, those issues are all there. They don't have the profile that they should have. So I think it's right to try and raise that profile. But we also, of course, the problem is CO2, and some other climate forcing emissions. But the main problem is CO2. So, it's right to try and mobilize the public opinion, and it's right to mobilize the surfing community. And I think you're obviously in a perfect position to do that. It's right to lift oceans issues up the agenda. But at the end of the day, to make a real impact in Paris and in the climate negotiations generally, you have to look to where the emissions are coming from. You have to start focusing on that. And when Seas at Risk did that, a few years ago, the conclusion that we made in terms of the areas that we should work on as an organisation was, well, we need to look at marine industries. We need to look at the users of the sea who are part of the problem. And I mean, shipping, that's the area that I work on most. I mean, that's the most obvious one. And it's nearly 1 billion tons of CO2 each year. If you treated it as a country, it's the 6th largest emitter in the world. I mean, from a surfing point of view and a Surfrider point of view, it's interesting as well because, these ships that are pumping out, I mean, they're burning very dirty fuel, they're running very inefficiently, they're a huge problem. I mean, their emissions are projected to grow dramatically. They're the same ships that are pumping oil out that are spoiling the beaches. They're the same ships that are dumping their rubbish overboard. That are ending up and spoiling these places. So, it's an industry that's pretty dirty and it's having a big climate impact. And, that's a mitigation issue. And, at the moment, industry is effectively unregulated. It wasn't part of Kyoto. It could be part of an agreement in Paris in 2015. We'll certainly be working on that issue, but we need all the help we can get. And I think it's, given that for surfers especially, what ships do at sea affects them very directly. That might be an area that you'd want to focus in. The fishing industry is another one that we work on, and also has, it's affected by climate change, but it's also a problem. Some of the most damaging fishing techniques are also the most energy intensive and the most polluting from a CO2 point of view. So, I mean, my appeal is, raise the issue of oceans in the climate negotiations, mobilize the public, but also you've got to focus on mitigation. And perhaps the way to go is to focus on marine industries. shipping being perhaps the most obvious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is an interesting point of view. Who's going to respond to that?
Juste pour vous remercier pour votre intervention. Sea at Risk
is very experienced vis-à-vis these questions. Delighted if you could join the platform, so please don't hesitate. Come and see us after this event, please, and we can discuss cooperation. I'd like to just add one thing, that is the knowledge, developing the know-how, knowledge regarding the ocean, the impact of the ocean on society and vice versa. It's a key element to succeed, to mitigate some behaviors, modify behaviors, and to find solutions. Knowledge, know-how, sharing this know-how, knowledge, communicating, it's so important. And so that all the partners intervene, it's extremely important. It's a must, actually. Another question, maybe? Thank you for your intervention. A question concerning, you mentioned programs in Europe, the program Keepers of the Coast. Do you have programs in other countries of the world, those the most affected? The Maldives, for instance, Surfrider, is it present there, and does it have programs at that level? And also, bearing in mind the presentation of the Netherlands, this possibility of using sand to fight the increase in the level of the sea, excellent initiative that could be used for these islands that are really threatened by climate change, Maldives and these different islands that are really threatened. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. No, quite honestly, Surfrider Foundation Europe, we work in Europe, obviously, but what's happening in Europe will happen in other places. If you take Surfrider, it's existed for more than 30 years, 3.0, created in California, in South America, we're present in Australia, Japan, but as for Europe, we concentrate on Europe, we focus on Europe. But I'd like to go to the Maldives, it would be great, all these small islands. The coastal areas are concerned, Maldives, it's even at the forefront. A lot of dangers encountered there, and indeed the program presented by Martin is really interesting, relevant, and it can be, such programs could be implemented in other places. The idea is not to promote such or such technology, the idea is to promote the fact that it is possible to fight. And this establishes an interesting link, by the way, what's happening in the field, the citizens acting. Bear in mind what was done in the Netherlands. It's absolutely great. It's something that's known at the level of the platform, and it can have an impact at the level of our negotiations. That's how we work. Concretely speaking, we don't have a representation over there, and I regret that deeply. But our organization is such that we have links, and it's important to underline this type of extraordinary example. A comment, if I may. Perhaps you've heard this, but Kiribati, small islands, the idea is that some of these people have immigrated. If you take the Netherlands, you have a lot of money there. But of course, for some countries, islands, it's not possible to react, and sometimes it's not realistic. Indeed, what are we looking for, us keepers of the coast? All of us, we're citizens, and we deal with the problems at the level of our territories. As you said earlier on, we only have one ocean, one planet, here we're talking global stakes. It's a question of global democracy also. Micro, macro, micro. In the Netherlands, what was done was great. There's the financial question that plays an important role. But this example, indeed, it would be great if we could do the same thing at the level of other territories via international solidarity concerning the small developing islands. They are at the heart of our concerns at the level of the United Nations. You know, they are considered as pioneers because they are going to be the first to find solutions to innovate. Thus, it's the north-south. The borders should disappear. There's a question of salt. The territories are being drastically reduced. If you take Australia, New Zealand, they are well aware of the fact that there's going to be a lot of immigration due to this. And this year, 2014, was the year of the small islands, developing islands. And I believe that we all agree in the sense that these islands represent a priority for all of us. We need to work more and more with these islands, and will profit also of their experience, their know-how. Another question over there, if I'm not mistaken. No? The gentleman over there. I was touched by the second presentation, the technical presentation. A question, ocean-wise, are there figures available, proportions for the public, to inform the public regarding when you talk about the absorption of CO2 emissions, if you take the influence of the marine industry, and how can it have a positive influence on the reduction of CO2 emissions? Sometimes we talk about plastic waste. It's perhaps complex to present the figures, percentages. I don't know. It's a kind of general question, I would say. Sophie, can you answer in French or English? If I understood correctly the question. No, what are the elements that influence the most the reduction of efficiency of absorption of CO2 in the oceans? You talked about algae, very effective to absorb CO2. What are the human factors that could indeed reduce this effectiveness, efficiency? Okay. I don't think I mentioned this in my presentation, but there are many interactions between different elements, different stresses as we call them. I have brochures regarding this matter available here in the room. When we talk about acidification, that jeopardizes some components of the marine ecosystem. It doesn't work alone. There are interactions. For instance, the increase of temperature interacts with acidification and also the reduction of oxygen. In fact, you have these three elements that act together. There are synergy effects, and the effects add up. Cumulative effect. As to the percentages, no idea, haven't got a clue. But what's sure is that we need to take into account all the stresses, all the elements linked to human activities. You need to take into account the temperature, oxygen, pollution, as you mentioned, plastic pollution, waste that increase the concentration of nutrients in the coastal areas. Tropicization. It's another element that plays a major role in the coastal areas. It's caused by the use of fertilizers, etc., in agriculture. It's extremely complex, by the way, and you need to carefully study all this, study this in a really integrated way in order to take into account all the different elements that we have. I hope I more or less answered the question. I'd just like to add something with figures. I'm not talking about climate change, just talking about the pollution of oceans. To mention a figure, 80% of the pollution of the water comes from the sea. So the sea, the ocean is sick due to land. Okay, so 80% the contamination comes from the land. One more question, perhaps? Good evening. Thank you to the different speakers. Thank you for your presentations. And thank you for this initiative that we have the Intergovernmental Society, Civil Society. We use boats for cooperation activities to protect the environment in the Pacific area. Sailing boats also in the Salmon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Haiti, etc. Different projects. If Ocean Watch could be the relay of the voice of our local partners in these islands, could relay the information to the platform, that would be great. But perhaps this was not explained within the framework of the presentations. If there are specific expectations, it would be really interesting to establish these links and to relay the information like that. Okay, that was an invitation, fine. Tomorrow morning we're organizing a workshop, information workshop, to go even further with the stakeholders of the scientific world, NGOs, and also perhaps, and we hope for local entities, so that we can establish common messages with all the stakeholders. Tomorrow morning, Benoit, 9:30 with a coffee. If not, we'll have other exchanges and other possibilities to invite you. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll stop here. Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to the students. Law. That was really great. It's great to have you here this evening. It proves, I mean, we had a great diversity of concerns, approaches, and the public is very diverse, and that's really interesting, encouraging. And that's it, basically. Congratulations, thank you. And I also realized whilst listening that the challenge for the platform Ocean Climate will be to disseminate these messages to a wider audience, different audiences, media, and such evenings for us. It's a great opportunity to fine-tune our messages, to dot the I's, cross the T's, to avoid not communicating. It's important to disseminate the information, to communicate. We need different stakeholders, spokespeople, and that's it basically. Let's have a drink, well-deserved drink. Thank you for your attention, thank you for participating, and also two things. You have the stand there, really interesting measuring equipment presented by Sophie. Check it out. Bob will be there to answer your questions. And then there you have Surfrider. If you have children, if you want to explain what can be done at the level of the coastal areas, there are a few tools, instruments. And if not, good evening, all the best, and cheers.